God Almighty, it's the Sweat Equity Podcast coming to you from Cigar City Studios in the Toco Works office. I'm your host, Law Smith. It's been a while since we've done Sweat Equity Podcast. It's really dumb of me not to keep it going because, as my wife was saying, you're doing a college football one called the Triple Option that doesn't bring in any cash or any potential cash, really, right now. But you have the Sweat Equity one that's getting you all these kind of business opportunities. Why aren't you pursuing that a little bit harder? And I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So that's what's been cool about this podcast. It's for those that haven't or new to this, it's a podcast about business advice, how to kind of train yourself to get hustle. I want to try to change it up where every now and again I might just do a 10-minute podcast about something that is good for people trying to do their own thing. I'll do that on my own, Bill Burr style, just be a weirdo by myself with a mic. And then, the still formatted interview. Long-form interview, try to figure out what people can do to help their business or really just get fucking motivated. Obviously, I'm rusty because this is kind of a rambling intro. We're going to bring in power attorney, as I like to say, power business attorney, Steve Fantetti of Fantetti Legal. Now, before he's going to get in here, he's going to do a little bit of a disclaimer so that any advice he may give is not legal advice. Because that's
we can just do it. That's perfect. You can basically say that the advice given on this podcast is more provided as a general reference. It's not meant to, create an attorney-client relationship. You're supposed to consult with a qualified attorney on any legal issue you might hear about in here. It's not intended for any other purpose, but for obviously general informational value and entertainment value.
Yeah, that's good. And we're live on Facebook Live. Forgot to do that, so a weird pause if you're on audio. But, all right. Beginning of the year, I'm getting hit up a lot for business consulting advice.
As you always are.
Yeah, as I always. But this time it's good leads. But it did make me think about, and I even emailed you. It's like, what are the legal docs I need to do? Because I always forget. I even have it written down. You've told me several times. But if you have a small business or you're a freelancer, what are those things you should get in the beginning of the year? Like, get those going. Yeah,
you mean like if you're an already existing company?
Let's do already existing.
Yeah, if you already exist, there's a couple things you got to do as a business. One, you got to make sure this is the time of the year between now and the first week of May where you got to file your annual report. It's definitely something that comes up. This is that time. Another thing you got to obviously do is make sure your taxes are filed. Definitely one, if you haven't already, start getting into your accountant, get your books cleaned up for the previous year.
Okay.
Get your balance sheet ready to go, give it to your accountant, see what your write-offs are, get your receipts together, things like that.
So here's a little tip for people with the CPA stuff. If you want to have your costs lowered, do as much organizing as you can.
Yes.
Unless you're a badass and you just can flop in and just give a shoebox of receipts, and you're willing to pay for that, that's fine. But I mean, like most small businesses and most freelancers can't do that. So, one trick I used to do was I used that mint.com where it kind of can take all your transactions and then you can tag them all and then export that into like an Excel chart or Google spreadsheet, and you can organize it that way. That way you'll at least have every online transaction or every digital transaction, I should say, kind of organized for your accountant.
Sure.
And I try to highlight I don't know if this expense should go here or this should go here,
And that's better than QuickBooks, or that's different?
It's different. It's one way. You can do QuickBooks too. That's another way, but some people are just averse to doing any of that kind of stuff, right? So you're on video, so you're pointing to yourself. But
that's right.
Yeah, that's fine. But that's fine too. I just try to.
I pay someone to do it all. That's
right.
the thing.
But most.
But I get it done.
Most people can't though. So it's kind of like. Plus, I think it's always good for you to do it as much as you can. If you have the time, which most people do, you got to create time, obviously. But it's one of those things where it's good to know kind of simple math in your head about taxes when you're making decisions on the fly as a business owner, where where your tax money is going. I think it's beneficial to do it or be really involved in it, at least in the first couple of years. So like if you're pricing correctly, if what's an expense and what's not an expense.
Of course.
So your decision making in the future is a lot quicker.
Yeah, before I start any company I'm involved in, you want to talk to an accountant first because you want to set up strategy. And if you haven't done it yet, or you didn't know what your strategy was and you're already an existing business, which is what we talked about, it's always good if you want the start of a new year, and usually it's the start of your new fiscal year, to be able to kind of game plan and map out what it is that you got to do. Maybe you have to make a certain election status with the IRS, because maybe you get a certain type of better tax break as a business, depending on what type of entity you are. If you're an LLC, if you're a corporation, you might want to file for a certain type of election that gives you a better way to avoid something like double taxation, perhaps, to be taxed, once at the corporate level and then not at your, dividend level when you get paid through distributions or otherwise.
So what's like a scenario of that?
So very, very basic. Let's say you're a single member LLC.
All right. I own a
pizza spot in Ybor.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Let's say you own a pizza spot in Ybor.
Huh.
And
a random metaphor.
Random.
Yeah.
There is the best pizza spot in Ybor. But anyway, let's just say that you want to
it's a bad name.
Run that. We already talked about that already. But if you're an LLC and you're single member, it means you're a disregarded entity, which basically means because you're solo, you have multiple different ways to where the IRS is going to recognize you for tax purposes.
Yeah.
You can get taxed as a partnership. You can get taxed on your own personal 1040. You file Schedule C, Schedule K.
Mm-hmm.
Different things to just declare your business income separate from your personal. But then how you declare it at the end of the day is what's going to matter to the IRS. But you can also do something where, if you haven't talked to an accountant, you can file for an S-Corp election you can make.
Mm-hmm.
Subchapter S, the IRS code, basically allows you to avoid what I just talked about, is the double taxation. When money comes into a business, it gets taxed as soon as it comes in at the corporate level.
Yeah.
And when people go to pay themselves, the money comes out of the business to pay them. It has to get taxed again.
Yeah.
But if you make this election for these small businesses that usually do this, and the LLCs, you can avoid the double taxation. You can avoid getting taxed on your dividend, your distribution payment to yourself at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But you will be taxed once at the corporate level. Instead of if you're just a regular C corporation or otherwise, you're going to be taxed twice. So there's things like that you can do to set in place, and there's a lot more. And obviously, depending on what size of a business you have, you're going to be taxed. There's corporate taxes, there's payroll taxes,
I own
benefits.
I own Best Pizza company
in Ybor,
and I want to pay myself. I'm an S corp. I want to pay myself. The advantage of being the S corp and having all of that set up is that if I was just if I wasn't, every payment that came in on the first round, we'd have to tax through the business, and then when I went to pay myself, I'd be taxed on that as well. So the idea is our company's an S corp. So when I do a distribution, I'm going to do the taxes on my whatever I've received personally.
Well, if you set it up that way with your account, I don't want to get too much into the accountant and tax.
No, I'm not either. I'm just
obviously not an expert.
I'm giving the basics though.
Right.
And, but I thought an S corp was a legal entity like a year and a half ago. So, and I didn't realize that that's a tax filing. So you can be an LLC, but you can be an S corp.
Right.
So just for people listening or watching or whatever, that's a big thing when you're a small business that you should probably set up.
Yeah, look out for your taxes. Whatever it is that your accountant says is best for you, go to someone who's got experience, who understands, has the knowledge. But again, the initial question to bring this back around full circle was what kind of things you can do at the start of a new year for a business that already exists. And we talk about some of those things about making your annual report filings, we said. We talked about making sure that your taxation's proper. Maybe learn from the previous year that you might not have been taking advantage of the taxes and tax breaks that you should have or maybe be getting.
Yeah.
And obviously, we also talked about, I think we talked about this you and I law before, but the other big thing is to audit your current documents, whether it's your corporate documents, if you have to make changes, which you're going to have to declare to the state anyway, if you're changing, for instance, board of directors, ownership members in LLC, management, etc. And obviously, you want to audit your contracts that you do on a daily basis, where you do business under these agreements, master services agreements, other type of services agreements, any type of supply agreements, depending on what type of business you're in. You're going to learn things, or you have over the past year, if you didn't audit them already, and you're going to say, you know what, remember these 3 or 4 situations where it caused us problems or where we might have taken a loss on something, we need to allocate for that now. We need to draft language or get a lawyer to draft language to put that stuff in our contract. So now we know this year we're protected, and you have to learn. One of the most important things for a business to do besides to grow financially is not just to grow financially, but it's to grow with business knowledge.
Yeah.
Which means that you have to learn from the mistakes you make. Every business makes some mistakes. They're of different sizes and of different ramifications, of course.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you know, you're growing more, not just as a business, but as a business owner or as a member of a business in whatever capacity that is. That you're understanding that you're growing and you're learning more about not just the business you're in, but just the way business is in general and how people are in the business realm. So that's another thing you can take away as a new business coming in into the new year.
So it's like I do that throughout. I'm trying to get better about that. That's a hard thing to. Continuous improvement is tough because it takes a lot of discipline. But like I was just going over a proposal before we started doing this, and I was looking at the company services agreement, and I was like, oh, we've added a lot of services that aren't listed on here. So like, you know, just advertising alone, there's going to be new platforms all the time. So
do we need to edit yours or audit yours?
I'm writing notes on it.
Let's do it.
So I tried to do as much as I can before I give it to you.
Yeah. Allegedly, I'm your attorney. No, I am your attorney.
but like for example, like you can advertise on Hulu now, and Pandora and Spotify. It's not that wasn't a thing.
Yeah, I didn't even know that
when we started we had that company services agreement made. So. It's always kind of, I keep side notes a lot of the time. I'll keep Evernote and I'll go, ask
plug.
Ask all, yeah, Evernote. You want to sponsor this podcast? That'd be great.
Slack it to me though, by the way, when you're ready to send me that info.
Yeah, see, Slack. You want to do that?
We use that a lot.
Slack's dope, man.
Talk about why that's good for a business, because that is.
I mean, Slack's really great. If you can have your lawyer be on Slack, that's beautiful.
Good thing I am.
Yeah, but I mean, it's been such a game changer as far as operations. So this is kind of like we're talking about just how do you get better in this next year. By the way, with your legal docs, just do one thing on your own. Change all the 2016s to 2017s that's listed in there.
Yeah.
Because that's one little thing that I sent a contract and I had it sent back because I was like, oh, shit. I forgot to change that one little thing. And that just doesn't look good, you know? It just doesn't look like you have your eye on the ball.
Sure.
And, you know, it's hard when you're doing a lot of stuff, but it looks bad. Anyway, Slack, internal communication. So the way we have ours set up is I have anybody on retainer that will have our own workspace to talk to, essentially a chat room that is fluid on your phone as it is on your desktop app.
I had to learn that. That's right.
And then for me, all my emails now have an external element. So I know if my partner, one of my partners is on an email and it's sent to me, I know someone else outside of what we're doing is on there. So not a client, or it could be a client, but like a graphic designer that's outside of us using them or hiring them. So it's, dude, if you have a business that is small business that has like, you know, more than 3 people, fucking, you better get on that. It's going to keep you organized too.
Well, I think you also said it's good because a lot of times this will happen in business too, and I know as a lawyer I deal with it where, you know, your clients will say one thing to you, and then a couple weeks or months later they'll come back like, that's not what I meant. That's not what I said. I'm like, no, you said this right here.
Right.
There's a record of exactly what they told you they wanted you to do or what they said, and that always helps.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Doesn't necessarily make them feel any happier, but at the same time, at least you can know that they see that you're competent enough that you relied on the information that they provided.
Yeah, and so like I've got a potential case going where I had to pull all, you know, some bad debt on a client, and I had to pull all the transcripts, but it was easy because I tried to funnel as much as I could with that client into Slack because I like that timestamp of everything too. Mm-hmm. And you can drop in photos and files.
And I think, actually, I'm not going to say that.
No, yeah, we'll wait till after February.
Well, it was about your contract. I was going to say, I'm not saying certain people do this. I'm saying I know people who have mandated that the communication with them in their contract that they do their business with happen through Slack.
Oh, yeah, we tighten that up, and that's fine.
People do that, too.
Yeah, and that's been a little bit of a dispute with everybody, but
of course,
that's fine. I mean, you got to sell them on, hey, you want us to work for you and be a consultant that is not spending a lot of your time just with meetings. And I like Scrum meetings. I like 20-minute meetings, all that stuff. This is going to be the most efficient way to communicate. You're going to have to trust me. This is kind of what we do. And so anyway, legal stuff. What about anything with, I know Trump's going to shake some shit up on the tax side.
You want to get presidential?
Well, I mean,
political.
How much is he going to change, like right now? Because he's not in until what, the 20th of January or something like that.
That's when the swearing in will be. Yeah. When he becomes president officially. He's president elect right now. Yeah.
Everybody's really worried.
In what way? The good way or bad way? You mean? And you're talking about small businesses, or do you mean just everybody in general?
I mean everybody in general. But yeah, I know tax wise, it's really going to shake a lot of shit up that way.
At least from a corporate level, yeah.
People are very scared of the implications of how healthcare is going to happen, what's going to happen there.
Well, let's talk about those two first.
All right.
Because those are actually two of the biggest ones.
All right.
I know at least from a small business standpoint that under Trump, business owners will see a decrease in their taxes. But that's assuming that he follows through with his plan. He plans to lower, small business taxes 35 to 15%, which is a huge cut across the board.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
So if anything, that will help small businesses, especially because with the saving of the revenues that way, 20% worth that they would have to otherwise pay to the government, they get to use that, which we assume would be to reinvest back in your business, whether it's creating new jobs, hiring people to help with payroll, obviously purchasing new equipment, doing things like that, which also helps the economy because you reach out to other businesses to get other goods and services, and it just it's a continuing cycle. And that's why you do that. Obviously, the big issue with doing that is the federal government has a budget, and the federal government has to obviously pay on its debt, et cetera. And without being too wonky about this stuff, essentially, he's got to make sure that if he is cutting, he's got to get the money from somewhere else so that the deficit doesn't grow any more than it already is for the federal government. So, it's all about budgetary, and I'm sure he's got more of a plan. I haven't seen or heard everything disclosed. I know he's got big things coming. Big league, so we'll see what those are. But I know right now.
I always hear big league.
Yeah, he loves that. Yeah, he says that. I know. I love that. It's good stuff. But anyway, but that's the thing for small businesses. So we'll see. I mean, his federal income tax plan also calls for it to help out individuals and certain families of certain sizes to have reduced taxes. So obviously, how you connect your taxes personally with you or to your business, Trump's tax plan will affect you. And as small businesses right now, the way he sells it. It looks like it could be a really good thing for businesses to save some of that money and reinvest it. Now, if you're a lot bigger company, doing business on a lot bigger of a scale, he's clearly made it shown, and at least he seems to be enforcing the fact that he doesn't want you offshoring business.
Yeah.
And a lot of companies, that's one of the major ways that they save revenue is by hiring cheap labor or getting products made cheaper and selling them more expensively back to the United States, but having them made cheaper elsewhere in the world, outside of the territorial borders of the United States. So they're going to be penalized for doing that now. So if you're a business, you got to find a different way to obviously adjust yourself and get ready for the fact that, is this corporate tax cut going to help us enough? And if it is, then that's good. If it's not, they're going to be hit, which means anytime their goods come back into this country or their business, the revenues that they make from outside the United States, they're going to be taxed on it heavily, and they're going to pay penalties on it, for lack of a better term. So it can affect businesses of all sizes, which is why I'm talking about this, big and small. And it looks a lot better for the smaller business that are really domestic and just get the advantage of this tax cut if it helps. But obviously, if you're a much bigger business and you do things a little bit differently, it can impact you in a whole different way than a small business would be affected.
Yeah, I know I was reading a lot and I've heard a lot. Surprisingly, hang out with a lot of attorneys about.
Surprisingly.
Well, I mean,
Excuse me.
I guess, a surprising amount, I would say, or more than most. My percentage of the people I hang out with is way higher. I hang out with attorneys. All right.
Not a bad thing.
Employment, I like to argue. Employment laws that change. I think some stuff happened in December, I want to say, that I can't remember, but I know it was a big deal.
I'm not sure specifically. There's a couple of things. I know one really got delayed recently, and that was the minimum wage increase. But that's been in Congress for almost 2 years, and it kept getting amended, and then it got put on hold. And so that's one of the big items that's supposed to be coming up in terms of being passed probably in the next term. We'll see. Other than that, I'm not really sure what else that you might be referring to. That's the most recent one I know about from an employment law standpoint.
I want to say it was dealing with the health insurance issue of how many employees, maybe.
Well, I know this, and this is, to get to another thing about Trump. Trump wants to take out the Affordable Care Act and kind of get rid of it, of course.
Right.
And obviously the rule mandates if you have 50 or more employees, you're mandated to provide the health care.
Mm-hmm.
So the issue is you have to go to the healthcare, workplace to be able to go through and look at all the premiums and select. And so apparently forcing companies, as the companies say, of course, from this side, and how Trump would argue it, is that you're making these companies go into the workplace, the healthcare workplace, and try to find these different premiums, and they're a lot more costly. They claim that the costs have risen 25% under Obamacare than what they were before. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that cost is clearly to offset those individuals that couldn't have ordinarily have received healthcare but for Obamacare coming into play. So how do you fund and how do you assist those people who couldn't have it? And that's why over 30 million new Americans have health care since President Obama brought Obamacare in. But again, there's a cost to it. The Supreme Court, when it was challenged, they found that, look, this is an actual tax. It's legal. And that's why it passed muster from the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's allowed today. But given that, businesses have been up, in arms about it because they don't think that they should have to be mandated to pay into this, and they could use the money and the resources elsewhere and maybe provide it privately through another carrier and get discounts, corporate type discounts. But everybody has to buy into it. And even if you don't have it as an individual, you have to pay a tax if you're not covered by healthcare, haven't bought into the Obamacare marketplace. So it's something that businesses claim to be costly, and that's an issue, and Trump wants to get rid of it. So they claim that's another way to help businesses keep money.
Yeah, and everybody gets health care, but no one's happy.
You think they would be when they figured it out, right?
Well, I mean, that's we can get into that whole philosophical discussion about, no social contract on stuff. What's the value if you give something away for free? It's zero,
True, but what's the goodwill that comes out of it? Or what's the good for the country? Can you put a dollar amount on that?
Sure, but is that respected? That's the other part.
Oh,
I'm
of course.
all down for that, but I don't think it's it's just due, I guess.
Yeah, at the end of the day, and I think even what you might be trying to say is, look, people want to see the tangible results of this. If they can't really see it, but we're assuming that there's good being done, they want to have some type of way to tangibly measure the impact. And sometimes you can't always have that. And I think sometimes just knowing that it's a good thing overall because of whether it's morality. This is sounding really liberal the way I'm speaking right now, but I mean, that's just the way it is. Sometimes people look at it from that standpoint as, doing the greatest good for the greatest number, obviously, and hoping that, from that way that society kind of in turn becomes good and businesses start doing good. And that's the way they really want to change the way businesses think about how they treat their employees and how they obviously deal with their economics. And so that's why they're trying to eliminate these offshore things, and Trump's trying to obviously do that. And he's trying to help businesses. He's not really trying to penalize them, but businesses are looking at it in a different way. Mm-hmm. And he's trying to say, look, there's a moral side to this. If you keep your business here, you are helping Americans. You're creating jobs for Americans. Yeah. You're giving them opportunity. You're giving families the ability to raise their children and give them more opportunities because the jobs are here and the work is here. And so that's what I mean. There's more to it than just the business and economic side. There's a social side to it. So, but those are two items so far. I mean, there's a couple more things. Another thing Trump's trying to do when he's president is he's trying to, support the H-1B program, and he's obviously trying to also help with the EB-5 stuff. EB-5, long story short, this is immigration law, and it's outside of my realm. I know briefly about it, but obviously it's foreign individuals that come into the country. If they can invest in businesses, create businesses with their capital, they can get a visa to come here and be here legally in the country. And so expanding that program, as well as the H-1Bs, having people being able to come in of certain skills. I used to work for a staffing company as their in-house counsel, and H-1Bs were heavily used. You got people coming from countries like India or China or elsewhere coming here to do IT jobs that sometimes, Americans graduating from certain universities couldn't do. And these people from overseas, people from overseas had a lot of talent at a lot of things, and so they come over here, they get the visas to be able to work over here legally.
Or engineers.
And help. Oh, many fields, and that field's one as well.
Engineers is the tough one.
Yeah, absolutely. And engineering in all fields, computer engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical, whatever it is. So, I mean, he wants to try and expand that program and allow more of this, which is surprising to me because he's so big on...
Bigly. He's so bigly on.
I guess he really predicates a lot of his presidency on the fact that he's trying to protect the borders and not allow a lot of immigration to happen. But he's kind of open for this
so
because
funny. He just talked so much shit. He said whatever that side wanted to hear, and he just he's not going to follow up on most of that shit.
Maybe you're right. I mean, he already said he's going to have Mexico not pay for the wall. Now he wants to ask Congress for the money.
Which is a good business move to me.
Maybe.
If that shows business savvy, hey, you're getting someone else to pay for it.
But he didn't get someone else to pay for it. He got the U.S. people to pay for it.
Sure,
when he said they would.
but it's going to get done.
We'll see. We'll see.
I hope not.
Congress has to approve it. But I do know that, like I said, he doesn't like a lot of the immigration stuff where people will come in and out. But I think he was looking at it more from a business. How does this help businesses, not the border part? Maybe he didn't think that through and see that it affects everything. It's not, you can't just dice it up and just call it what it is by cherry picking. Well, this only applied to businesses. I didn't talk about immigration totally. I just meant it's okay for businesses, but not to come in the country and live otherwise. Well,
oh, dude, no one's
illegal immigration.
No one's keeping his shit accountable. It doesn't, because no one, like, he said so much garbage that, like, it's so crazy. He is a WWE wrestler. Like, he's like, just talks a lot of shit and then gets in the ring, is not going to do anything.
I don't know that. We'll see. I mean,
I know that.
I'm giving him a chance. I'm going to see what happens.
No, he's our president. That's fine.
Yeah,
I'm not going to like, I didn't vote for him, but I'm not going to be like one of those people that's like going to riot over it. That's like insane. But, everybody should be questioned in a position of power. Your moves should be questioned. I just don't know about like a whiny protest in Portland or something like that.
Yeah. Maybe one more thing I think I'm trying to recall. I know he talked about he's kind of supposed to trying to make it more lenient on the banking regulations, which I'm surprised about, because when Obama came in with Dodd-Frank, that he passed that legislation was to obviously help offset a lot of the things that were happening in the economy, where a lot of banks had a lot of freedom.
That's scary.
With lending and leverage, and I think that
we need more regulation than anything.
Well, sometimes more is not good from an economic standpoint either, but because you want interest rates to go down as much as you can. You don't want those to be inflating, and also you want to be able to control the ability for banks to lend. When banks lend, it does help the economy. People are able to get houses. People can get small business loans. So I think when he
get another recession.
Well, and that's the problem. He's got to remember that.
We've flipped sides on this, because you're more for. I'm more for regulation on this, and I think if
I am more fiscally conservative in that matter. Yes, I don't need too many. You need some, but I don't want as much as you do.
I'm just saying philosophically.
We've talked. Yeah,
you're more liberal. I guess I'm more in the conservative area or on the right. If I had to pick one side, but.
You'd be more liberal if you want more protections, I think, perhaps in this realm.
Right, that's what I'm saying. We're kind of flipping.
Oh, yeah. You mean in general? Yeah.
Because I'm just from the recession standpoint, a lot of that to me had to deal with deregulation and being able to just go wacky. Yeah, anybody. Yeah, you work at Starbucks? Yeah, I'll get you a loan on a house. Whatever you want to do.
Well, there was
that. And then we're going to funnel that into a tranche of shitty mortgages that's going to get passed around.
And then sell those off. You're right.
And then, and then the government will have to bail us out. Yeah. So I don't want to see that again, because I don't know if it's people being very fearful of this again, but I feel like everybody's like, oh, man, recession's going to – another real estate bubble is about to happen, bro. Like, have you heard this from a lot of people?
That there's a bubble?
Another bubble about to pop? Like, they're doing the exact same thing.
I haven't I'm not going to say that we're not in a situation where what happened in 08, 07, 08 could happen again, because it could. It very well could. Mm-hmm. What worries me is the government not having the proper revenues to pay certain debts and obligations off and to put it back into the economy because of the cuts that he's going to be granting to certain maybe income more wealthy classes, businesses, etc. But I mean, I think businesses deserve a break. How much the cut is, it's not up to me right now to say, but I do know that the possibility of it happening again is there. But I think if he is gonna deregulate some of our economic entities and banks and things like that he has to be careful which ones he does decide to do it for.
Yeah, he
has to be really choosy in doing it, because Dodd-Frank's been there for a reason, and it's a lot harder to get a house and a loan today and do things than what it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, not
even close to being the same. I mean, you could have no income qualification loans in the early 2000s. There was pick-a-pay mortgage. You could pick your rate. I mean, all these things, without them checking what you made and providing bank and income statements. I mean, so there's a lot of things now that are in place that weren't in place before. So
let's short the market, man. Yeah. Let's figure out what the
Billions.
Big Short did.
You ever watch that show too? Billions?
Is it good?
Oh, man, it's a good show.
I'll check it out.
I'm only in season 1 right now. Well, only is one season out, but it's a good show.
Huh.
They say short like 40 times an episode, so it's funny.
Really?
But anyway, that's as soon as you said, I thought about Billions.
Oh,
good show, though.
The Big Short. Have you seen that?
Of course I did. We talked about that before.
Yeah. It's
excellent movie about that. All that happened.
Excellent book. It explained everything that was going on with that story of how they kind of were the counter, they figured it out before everybody.
Right.
Just by being like the people everybody kind of hated in an office or to work with.
Office Space does that too.
Trying to think of other good legal stuff.
We talked about so far, what a new what an existing business should do as they start the year off. We talked about what they should do to kind of like a look back period, what they should look to change moving forward, what they got to do moving forward. Obviously, we talked about the new administration that's coming in this month in January when President-elect Trump gets sworn in. We talked about the impacts his legislation might have as he tries to raise.
That's a good recap.
Yeah, so we've gone through those. So I'm just making sure you know where we're at.
Yeah. I got notes. I'm
good recap, you said?
I've got Evernote.
Of course. Wow, you're just plugging them today.
Oh, yeah.
You can be a sponsor of this podcast if you want.
Come
it's
on,
not my
Evernote.
podcast.
Do it, bitch.
That'll sell it.
What does it say is freelancers.
What about them?
So we use a lot of independent contractors, and I feel like
1099.
Yeah, we're gonna get. I'm not saying. I want to ask a question from their side. What can we do? What should they do? I'll give you a bigger picture. We're getting in this freelancer kind of society. I feel like more and more people are gonna. I think our generation and younger are gonna have several gigs going at once. Whether that's
I do.
Being an Uber driver.
Not because I have to. I want to. But people do it on purpose. Yeah.
No, I feel like or their main source of income is going to be an Uber driver or
no, it's true.
An amalgam of
they make some money too.
Oh, you can do it. But you got to treat it like it's a business, which most people don't.
It's smart.
So my thing is like, all right, for us, we hire so many independent contractors depending on what job for each client. I try to give them resources on like, hey, here are a couple of things you should do to kind of, protect yourself. I don't have to do that, but I do see the value in going, hey, here are some mistakes most independent contractors make as far as not protecting themselves. Like, you should go get an LLC.
Yeah, you got it. Create an entity's one.
Right.
Obviously, read if you're going to do business with somebody. Don't just show up and do the work and not have an agreement in place.
Right.
Have some type of an independent contractor agreement in place where, you're kind of laying out the scope of the work, the hours you need to work, how you're being paid, when you're supposed to be paid. If you are performing a certain type of service or job, whatever it is, that can you leave in the middle of the work if you're not getting paid? Sometimes you still have to perform if you're in certain types of fields like the medical field or other ones where you can't just get up and go. So, you got to be careful and understand what your rights are in those capacities. Obviously making sure from a taxation standpoint, you got the proper documentation filled out. If you're being 1099, do it. If it's going against your business, and you do it that way too. So a lot of those things you have to do. But number one, the one the law says the most important is sometimes you don't just want to operate, unincorporated, as I like to say it. You want to make sure you have some type of, unless you're going to be a sole proprietor and do it that way, you have sole liability on yourself for anything that goes wrong when you're performing services, and you don't have any type of insurance covering you. You can't hide behind the protection of an entity with that limited liability that it may provide, whatever entity you are. So
let's give a scenario.
Those are things to think about.
You could be a graphic designer. You could have stolen IP knowingly or unknowingly.
There's that too. Well, yeah, you're gonna have to sign NDAs and confidentiality agreements. So you want to have an attorney review those for you and make sure you know what you're getting into and what your parameters are for access.
So you submit that, and then you get in trouble. It falls to your LLC and not your house.
Exactly, your car, whatever. And that's actually a really good point you brought up before that. Not just the documents, but I do know this because I've helped and assisted a lot of people that are independent contractors in the legal field. Is whatever field they're working in, the big dispute that they get into because they either didn't have a contract or they didn't ask for it to be in a contract and it's not properly worded, is the ownership of work product.
Yeah.
A lot of times because they work for, let's say you have Toco Works has a graphic designer come in. Let's say Hoppy comes in or somebody trying to do some work, right? It's a plug for my boy. Just think about this,
I'll
though.
edit that out.
Edit that out?
I never edit the show, but I'll edit that out.
Why not? You don't like that?
No, I love Hoppy, man. A former intern. Yeah.
I'm not saying anything bad. I love the guy. I got to go on his show soon. He asked me to be on.
On Hoppy Hour. Check it out.
Yeah, that's the #1 show in the Bay.
No, it's not.
It is. So
this one is.
This one is.
Don't plug his.
This is a business #1 business show.
Yeah.
So we got way off topic, but what were we saying? Oh, sorry. Now I remember. The point is, if they come in and start working for you, whatever they create when they're working, they're going to claim that, the way I did this or how I got this idea made or whatever I extrapolated from creating this for you, I own that. Yeah. I own those ideas. And the dispute that they get into legally is, well, For instance, if I was Toco Works, I would say, well, look, you wouldn't have been able to develop this, but for the opportunity for you to be here.
Yeah.
The inverse claim is, well, one, perhaps, but I use my own ingenuity and my own thinking and intelligence to, create and establish what you needed from deciphering and looking at the information provided to me, and I made it happen. So there is that argument. Because those arguments actually do hold weight legally, and I'm talking about these very generally to avoid boring you with the actual legal statutory language.
That's
essentially,
the fun version?
It's the fun version. So essentially what I'm trying to say is, to avoid that dispute, it's a lot better to have it already worded up front, works made for hire, and define what that term means. Use the United States Code provisions. Have that in your NDA or otherwise other documents. You have them sign independent contractor agreement, etc., so that they know up front that when they leave this place and their term or time is done, they can't take anything with them, and they don't own it, and they can't reproduce it. They can't re-engineer or do anything else to anything that they have. And a lot of times, what you have to understand and why it's important for you to protect them too is the business can be held liable.
Right.
If this business is working for somebody else, and they don't know who you have working for them independently, contract-wise, that come in, but you're going to be responsible for them for the most part. And so there's arguments around that. I'm not going to get into the specifics, but essentially, you can be held liable for the acts of your so-called principal under workers working for you that aren't principal employees. But if they give you access to information that's proprietary to their company, they may or may not want certain people in your company to see it and they're working on it, or what they can and can't have access to, or they're going to tell you the restrictions they want you to put upon them. Not even ones that you want for your office.
Right.
It depends. It's different because of the product that they have. So you have to tailor things specific to them too. And normally that company will give you a document and make you sign it and hold everybody responsible or make them sign one, but sometimes they don't. And it's your even job as a business owner to ask that too and make sure that you have everything in place when you bring your independent contractors in as well, so that there's coverage all around and avoid that liability.
Yeah, my philosophy is cover all bases, but go an extra mile. Because if
more is better in this sense.
But if I can give advice that I would, because the people we want to use as an independent contractor on a certain client, I vetted them. Part of vetting them is I like who they are usually as a person. So I want them to be able to have these resources available, because it's literally like people don't know where to go, what to do on a lot of this stuff. I wouldn't say you're smiling.
I'm just laughing about the edit to Hoppy thing.
I was like, oh shit, did I say something?
He wants the plug. He loves it.
No, don't bring him up again, or you're gonna be banned. You'll be banned from here too.
Like you're gonna let that happen?
No. What I was saying is, for freelancers, you can do stuff on Upwork and all that stuff, but it is important to get this done through a real attorney. Don't do Don't do LegalZoom. LegalZoom.
Where's a good source to get some legal work?
If you're in the state of Florida, I've heard of this place called Fantetti Legal. Your business refined, where you can get employment contracts, operating agreements, LLC startup,
corporation,
all
do it all.
Anything in the business atmosphere. But if you're outside of the state, we do have listeners outside of here.
That's true, we do everywhere. Canada too.
You can hit us up because you may know some other guys.
I do. Big in New Zealand, I heard the show is too.
Oh yeah,
yeah, I heard that.
Oh, sweet.
It's a rumor.
A lot
I
of
heard
Kiwis.
That. Yeah.
Awesome.
So what were you saying?
No, but if you're Michigan, you might know you got some buddies.
Oh yeah,
maybe over there.
I know lawyers in almost every state.
You might have a referral, and
if
not,
course.
You just need to Google a business attorney and kind of vet that out. Yeah. But it's people don't even know to look for that.
No, they don't.
So that's a thing of like, some of this is just very basic to you, but I'm telling you, like, most people wouldn't even know. They just go, "Oh, this guy does real estate, and he did all my docs." And it's like, that's kind of silly, because that's like, I'm a house painter, but I'm going to do your plumbing.
Yeah, well, exactly right. Like,
we might know a little bit about each other's shit. But
no, it's true, because you're absolutely right. Because people think a lot of times because I'm a lawyer that I know everything about the law.
Right.
Like, I have people come to me like, listen, I got this divorce. Can you help me? Like, man, I don't know the first thing about family divorce.
Right.
Not really. I mean, I knew some of it. I'd take it to pass the
go
bar.
To court. Yeah.
Don't go to get a prenup.
The lawyers are
too
going to
late.
take 70% of your purse.
Well, and your wife's going to take the other, whatever.
Right.
No.
So don't figure that shit out.
But at the end of the day, it's good to find someone who focuses on that area of the law, because they'll be more tuned into it They'll obviously understand about the changes and things that are going on in the atmosphere of that area. And I think that always you're going to draw on the experiences that they've had. I've had a case like this before. Here's what happened. Here's what we did. Here's how we avoided a problem. Good. Then I will avoid the same problem because I will take the same steps.
So 2 other things for the independent contractor part, and then
Sure.
we'll close it out because you got a meeting here.
Yes.
The one thing, it kind of goes backwards to what we were talking about with Slack,
Mm-hmm.
is if you're an independent contractor, freelancer, try to get everything written in email. So it's you're protecting yourself on this. If you ever have to go to court, like if you have a phone call, this sucks and it's hard to train yourself to do, but write down what you just talked about in that phone call, email
Right.
it and say, per this phone call, we talked about this, this, and this.
Right. Your communication follow-up is big, and lawyers got to do it as well. I mean, a lot of times when I get an assignment from somebody, I'll follow back up with them and just say, just so you know, I'm doing this and this and this at this rate as we discussed.
Right.
If I don't hear from you, I'll assume there's no objections.
Yeah.
But, I mean, lawyers got to have people sign fee agreements up front, disclose that stuff anyway, so we already are really going to know. But sometimes, you have a fee agreement and then the scope of work might change because they'll call you and say, oh, I also want this as well. And you might have to modify that or send
Sure.
an email out and get clarification.
This is a work order change, essentially.
Yeah, things like that. I mean, those things happen, and that's good. That means you're doing more. You're moving and shaking and getting things going with your business, and different opportunities come up. So that's always good. So,
I just tell
communication.
people, you want a timestamp on everything.
Re-up is good. Exactly right. You never know when you're going to need it.
Right.
Just make litigation's heavy with that.
Make it part. Yeah, and it's sometimes it's not going to be worth it. So it's like, at least make a strong case if it ever has to get to that point. You're really dealing with a shitbag that's like, yeah, try me. And you're like, okay, here's everything we have. Here's the whole documentation of our
Sounds
back
familiar.
and forth. Yeah.
Sounds familiar.
Well, I'm going through this a few times. I was going to dovetail right into that, which is dealing with, if you're a freelancer, independent contractor, dealing with someone who's not paying, best to go to a collections agency. It's tough. It's tough to figure. Obviously, there's no sweeping answer. I know that.
Well, no, that's kind of it. I was going to say.
Oh, okay.
Don't just go. You have to give them an opportunity to make good on it first.
What does that mean? So
you can't. So if someone misses a payment, you can't necessarily send them to collections immediately. You got to follow up. The Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, first of all, has certain types of requirements, and I don't practice in that area of law, but I do understand that, give them some opportunities to pay. You can't just take somebody to court or send someone to collections without giving them notice and opportunity to be able to pay and make good. Give them an opportunity or extension to obviously be able to make it. And clearly, if they're skipping out on you, they're not available for the payment, or they left the country, you're going to have no other choice anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But, filing liens and doing other types of stuff that eventually we'll get to try to get money, garnish wages. I'm getting way towards where you got to get
those
to
take a long
enforce
time.
it. It can take time. But, you got to get, obviously, a situation set up with a collection company where they're going to want to buy that debt and obviously give you something for it. But before that, you might want to call, a debt collection attorney and see if they can try to enforce any type of provisions, any type of agreement you have with the client to be able to collect under the contract. And if the payment's late, whatever your payment term stated for that, if there's interest or whatever wise you can collect, you can enforce that. Try to get your attorney's fees. You have to pay an attorney to go there to get that money. You wouldn't have had to do it if it wasn't for them. So there's a lot of different things you want to do and put in place and protect yourself with to obviously do that. But you obviously want to give the person a chance to make do when the payment's late. And obviously, like I stated earlier, how you tie your services to a payment being late if they're not all finished yet. A lot of times you might be billing midway through a project, and they've paid you some of it, but not all of it, and you're supposed to finish the project, and they're on you about it. You got to be careful what your rights were and what the contract says about you not meeting deadlines or you not completing something. Did you tie it to the money payments incrementally?
And on the business side, you need to inherently have this in your price for cash flow delays, because a lot of freelancers live by like, hey, I'm done giving them money.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I'll give you this advice.
Maybe 60 days.
Get it up front.
Yeah.
That's the easiest way to run all of this, by the way.
As much as you can.
It's not always possible, but I'll tell you this. It's very rare that I would do.
Create a flat fee for some of your items.
Yeah.
Your services.
Yeah. Do something like that. Try to find ways to just say, look, I won't get the money. I won't do anything until I get the money up front. Or the easiest arrangement is I'll do half the work for half the money. Mm-hmm. And once you pay half up front, do half the work.
Yeah.
Once you complete half the work, ask for the rest of the money. That way you have it before completion.
Yeah.
It's funny how motivated people are to pay when the work needs to be done versus when the work is done and then they got to pay you. the motivations change.
Well, so
lawyers see it all the time.
So with these kind of invisible deliverables, as I kind of call it,
it's like a good term. I like that. Write that down.
Digital goods.
Sure.
A lot of the stuff we give as a deliverable, we've made it so that we have systems of we're going to hold on to this. We'll do it half up, half at the end for a website, right?
Sure.
But we're going to hold on to that site. You're not going to own it until that second half's paid.
Sure.
So we have that part of the process, and we kind of lay it out. So
Yep.
Client expectations on these things is important.
Yeah, it's all about disclosure and notice and setting those expectations early, letting them know early that these are the parameters of the business relationship that you're going to engage in.
And then what are the extra costs if you're paying for stuff out of pocket? That's
course.
On top of it. Make sure that you have that written out. Like
keep track of business expenses.
And again, try to be overly cautious and say, anything over, have something that says anything over X amount of dollars, I'm going to get approval on.
Sure.
We're
going to approve on all expenses.
Yeah, you can.
Whatever you can do either way is fine though. If they're general small expenses to get the job done.
It's tough because you want to have a good client experience. You don't want to ticky-tack annoy them.
Sure.
But it just depends what kind of project you're doing.
I agree.
And so on that side, it's like if you get bad debt, the first things I had an email from my buddy Rob this week, and he was like, I've never been through this stuff. And I was like, oh, let me tell you, I have the perfect template for you. I've made a form internally for us so that if bad debt comes up again, I have the questions that that I have ready to go. So what's the last communication you had with them?
Yep.
What are the last 3, I guess, communication?
Sure.
What did that say? When did you send invoices? How late are they each?
Yep.
What was the total? Do you have the company services agreement, the contract with that person?
Is there interest you can charge?
You need to get all this shit together, because if that's another thing, like I was talking about with the taxes, if you want to save yourself a lot of back and forth time and a lot of frustration, get all that shit in a Dropbox or some kind of or Google Drive folder or whatever.
Right.
And just have that ready to go before you're going to talk to a collections agency or an attorney, because that's all they're going to tell you in the beginning. Is like, I'm going to need all that stuff. And if you don't have it ready, you just wasted an hour, whatever, trying to schedule that call.
It's true.
And so
100% true.
And so and then, try to make sure you have a case and you've done everything on the up and up.
Yeah, it'll be your lawyer's decision to know if you have a case or not. But
sure, but I'm saying
the lawyer can't gather the info that you can or give the info. You got to keep a case almost yourself, like you're saying. If that's what you're saying.
Get all the info and then highlight the areas that you think are important. Like here's where this happened. Here's a spike in this conversation. Here's where this happened. But I'm going to give you everything. You look at it yourself. But here's to kind of help you out, to kind of make this faster. That's how I did it. Like I had to explain how Slack worked because my lawyer was going to have to explain it to a mediator, right? So I've got to do this through my attorney that was doing a mediation. And so I laid out a whole big diagram of what it is, how it works, why we use it, and how the process flow of deliverables. So if you send me this picture of the client, they want it on Facebook and Instagram, I take that, I write some copy, I make the picture a lot better looking, I format it correctly, and then I push it out, and I schedule at the correct time according to their statistics, like from their Facebook page.
But it's all timestamped, which
is
the most important part.
It is, but you're gonna have to explain these things if they're in the newer realm, I'd call it, like the digital world, where you got to remember the people that are gonna make that decision if it does go to court or mediation or whatever. They don't know any of this stuff, so don't assume that they're gonna understand. And if anything, like most people, they're going to think social media is just silly. And so if you work
it is, though.
It is, but it's business. And,
it's a thriving one.
Look, and that is a service we offer, and it's silly, and I get it. But it is, if you want to go serious on it, that's your PR. That is, you control your message. It's a big deal to represent whatever company we represent. So
it's huge.
It's bigly. So
big league.
So I know, like, explaining awesome. That we just run someone's Facebook page will sound like nothing to a court, a lawyer, mediator, all that stuff.
Yeah, they're
So you have to
more
explain
old school.
why it's important.
Exactly, they're more old school. They either won't know what Facebook is, or two, they'll say, "I have a Facebook page. I put a picture on, and I can see my wall, and that's it." You're like, "Wow, there's so much more you can do from business perspective."
I have the whole process. We have eight parts to it.
You're
if
right.
you do it correctly, and that's not even counting like
you've done stuff for my Facebook page that I wouldn't have known how to do. That was possible. Even pushing out an ad. I didn't even know you could do this.
Yeah.
And pay some money and do this and make it reach people and beyond who your friends are on your Facebook.
It's real.
Something so small as that can help you get business. And good thing you taught me that, Law.
So you can post something that changes into an ad if you boost a post, but if you boost a post on Facebook, you're a jabroni. Because that's not really doing anything unless you created an audience beforehand.
Nerd alert.
Hey, I'm just trying to help all the people out there.
That's true. He's right.
Because I have that. I probably explain that 12 times a month.
No, that's awesome. I love it.
Because people are like, "Well, yeah, I boosted a post. Fuck those ads. They don't work." And I'm like, "You're not doing it correctly."
Just to say boost the post sounds funny. That's why I laugh.
All right, well, we're gonna boost you out of here because
I gotta go to
you're a busy man.
I am. So are you.
All right, man. Thanks for doing it.
Thanks for having me, man. Anytime.
FantettiLegal.com. Anything else? Triple Option Podcast. You're the co-host.
That's it.
As well. With our buddy Chad, and I'm trying to think of anything else to plug.
Boost the sweat equity post.
I will. Oh yeah, I definitely.
Get it out there.
I do every time.
Make sure you listen. It's good advice this guy's giving.
This gets to small business owners. That's how good
everywhere.
I can get targeted with it.
That's good.
All right. Peace.